So welcome everybody. This evening we're going to talk about, will life on Earth ever get better? I think that's the question we've been thinking about it because things are so difficult. We had a 2020, a very difficult year with COVID, and we're still going on pandemic. So we always ask those questions. Will this ever get better? So we'll try to get some, to give you some light on this topic. That's our hope to this evening. So starting our talk, we get this idea from the chapter 18th, from this unbelievable book, Genesis by Allan Kardec. It's worthy reading. And chapter 18th is the last chapter, and the title is The Time Has Come, and is divided in two topics: signs of time and new generation. So we're gonna focus on our study, our talk tonight on new generation. But before, we needed to go a little over on the signs of time, because we need to talk about the planet Earth, right? That's the planet we live on, so we need to talk about it, right? Okay. So the time has come. In what sense must these prophetic words be understood? I think everybody had an opportunity to hear this. The time has come. It's like the end of the world. Something bad is going to happen. And we get anxious and we get sometimes angry without knowing what is the meaning of this. So this chapter that I mentioned, Allan Kardec, starts the chapter we mentioned before talking about this. He says, the time set by God has come, we are told everywhere, in which great events will occur for the regeneration of humankind. I remember one thing very interesting that happened when I was a teenager. I was in Brazil, in São Paulo, and we have this neighborhood. And behind my mom's house, there was this huge area, and it was the power station of the electricity company. And that thing got on fire. Guys, they have like very tall, they still have until today, those tall towers. And that thing got on fire. It was like night become day. What I witnessed with my very own eyes that day, I was a teenager, I saw people running on the streets, back and forth, screaming, this is the end of the world, the time has come. And it was just, of course it was scary, because believe me, the night became day, on that neighborhood at least. But, the firefighters came and they put down that fire, but we were frightened. And it was more frightened to see people running like crazy, like maniacs in the street, saying the time has come and it's the end of the world, right? So we're going to try to understand what is this. So in what sense do these prophetic words be understood? For these believers, people that don't believe anything, they repudiate this idea, saying that it is childish or it's unfolded belief. However, for the majority of believers, it contains something that is mystical or supernatural, that seems to be the precursor of the upheaval of the laws of nature, like a violent or change disturbance will occur. Now, what Kardec says? Kardec says, both interpretations are equally erroneous, because the first one implies the denial of providence, that like God doesn't exist. And the second one is erroneous because such words do not declare the disruption of nature's laws. When you say the time has come, it doesn't mean a tragedy. It doesn't mean a cataclysm. We're going to talk about that. So, but rather their fulfillment, as we'll soon next. So, what we must understand, everything in this creation is in harmony. As much we think on the contrary, everything in creation is in harmony. There is a provident care that reveals itself on the smallest or greatest matters. You see that bee over there making honey? That's God taking care. So, for starters, we must discard anything that contradicts God's wisdom. Think about it. Why we would have the earth being exploded all of the Sunday? With what purpose? So everything that goes against God's wisdom, we discard it. That's not going to happen. Second, if we are designated for the fulfillment of certain things, is because they have a reason in comparison to the whole picture. Let me just say, just a small, we are going through a pandemic right now, COVID-19, the global, it's thousands of people are dying right now. And when we say, where is God? Everything is in harmony, believe it or not, because our vision, because we are incarnating this physical body, our vision is narrow, is restricted. We cannot see the big picture. It's going to be more clear, this statement, and I'm saying, because we're going to talk about those events later. So as humans, we are unable most of the time to have a look of the great picture. Now, having said that, we need to talk about one thing that we have so many lectures on this, about the moral laws. As you see, we highlighted the law of progress. And if you go, and our planet, like everything else, is subjected to the law of progress. As you see in these slides, all those moral laws and law of progress is one of them. So these laws are described in detail on the part 3 of the Spirit's book by Allan Kardec, entitled Moral Laws. It's worth it, read it, and worth it, study it, because those are very, very important knowledge that we should have, and we should discuss and should meditate about it. So each of these laws has a separate chapter. They are so important that Allan Kardec put a separate chapter in the book for each one of these laws. So the law of progress made chapter 8 in the book. So why are we talking about this? Because what happened is, so Earth progresses physically and morally. Physically, through the transformation of the elements that compose it, and morally, through the purification of the incarnate us and discarnate spirits that populate it. Yeah, that's right. The planet is populated by incarnate and discarnate spirits. And we all, including Earth, are subjected to the law of progress. So these areas that we talk about it physically and morally, both this progress, they are related to each other. They don't happen standing alone, right? Oh, I have a progress the earth here. I have a progress of morally here, physically here, morally here. No, they are connected to each other. So both these areas accompany each other and march in parallel because the perfecting of the habitation is in keeping with the perfecting of the inhabitant. So physically speaking, we have science. High science has proven that the globe, the earth, has undergone transformations that have made it habitable for beings more and more perfected. So that in the earliest years of the formation of the earth, we couldn't have human beings because the earth wasn't ready. But because of law of progress, the earth was progressing. Of course, they are directed by intelligent beings, and Jesus is one of them, is the governor of this planet. So the earth was evolving. So when was time, we had human being incarnated here, spirits occupying bodies for human beings. So you see the progress goes in parallel. Now, we talk about physically, now talk about morally. Humankind also progresses by developing the intelligence, moral sense, and softening the customs. If you have, what is customs I'm talking about? If you go to Romans time, the ancient times, it was custom to have slaves, and it was custom to make them blind, literally, poking their eyes and make them blind so they wouldn't run away. And it was accepted by society at that time. So today we listen to those things and say, what? No, this is cruel because we evolved as human beings. So those customs also, we evolve our sense, our moral sense, our intelligence evolves. So while the improvements of the globe occurs under the control of physical forces, humans participate in it through the efforts of their intelligence. Of course, we not always are conscious with Earth, but we made some progress. Our intelligence has improved in many regions on Earth and communications, making the Earth more productive for us. So as you see, we have both physical forces and we have intelligence, and those are subject to the law of progress. All right, so we have dual progress. Physical forces is low, occurs, and so this dual progress occurs in two ways. One, which is the physical forces, is slow, is very gradual, imperceptible. Now, when you combine the other one, the morally one, it's more abrupt. See, we are comparing the two of them, right? We are comparing the two of them. While you see the Earth, you see a dinosaur. Until the dinosaur extinguished and then the Earth were ready for humans, if you compare all those years that happened, and if you can compare with the human development in comparison is abrupt. But the first one, the physical forces, are very slow, gradual. Very well. So, this explains why the progressive movement is sometimes partial, such as the one, if you have like a particular race or nation, whereas at other times it's more generalized. So we have all these, and you cannot forget one thing, where we forget here, with free will and natural laws. So all these are subordinated in details to human free will and natural law. So everything happens like this. Now, remember, morally includes intelligence, moral sense, and softening of customs. So since the human progress coming from a law, and all the laws of nature are the eternal work of divine wisdom and foresight, everything is the effect of these laws, is the result of God's will. Not an accidental or capricious will, but an immutable one. So we're going to talk about God. Time has come. Consequently, when humankind is mature enough to ascend a degree, one can say that time set by God has come. It's like when we change seasons or time come for the ripening of a fruit or in the harvest. You see, we have the season, we have summer, we have spring, we have winter. It's like the seasons. So humankind, we have our seasons too. So when we are mature enough, then we're going to ascend a degree. Now, if God was indifferent, the natural laws before, the fact that progressive moment of humankind is unavoidable, it is unavoidable, doesn't mean that God is indifferent toward it. It say, okay, it's unavoidable, so it's there. Like a canoe in the river drifting. That's not it, right? If God was indifferent, the natural laws would become inactive, leaving things to continue by chance, and nothing is by chance, right? So on the contrary, God's laws are eternal and immutable. Now, if God's laws are eternal and immutable, what do we have to say about it? Something very, very important. You see that clock over there? God's thoughts penetrates everything and is the intelligent and ongoing power that keeps everything harmonious. God's law are eternal and immutable because God's will itself is eternal and constant. And because God's thought animates all things without interruption, if the thought of God were to cease even for an instant, the universe would be like a clock without the regulating pendulum. So God incessantly watches over the execution of the divine laws. And the spirits who populate space are God's ministers, charged with the details according to the attributions corresponding to their degree of advancement. And Kardec took a note of this when they compilated the Spirit's book. He knew that he could ask questions and any spirit could answer that question, but he notes some differences in degree of advancement of evolution on them. Now, the time has come. We have now what we call, Kardec called, new generation. What is that? So, one such time has come. There will be a great emigration from among those inhabit the earth. Those who practice evil for evil's sake and who are untouched by the sentiment of good will no longer be worthy of transformed planet. They will be banished from it because their stay would once more cause trouble and confusion, and would be an obstacle to progress. So we have Earth populated by incarnate and discarnate spirits. And we're going to have this immigration of spirits. How this is going to happen? Some will expiate their hardness of heart on less evolved worlds. We're going to talk a little bit about many words, the classification of the words that brought by Spiritism. Others will do so among primitive race groups on Earth, which will be the same as expiating on less evolved worlds. So if you have a spirit that is given a chance to this spirit to practice good, sometimes given this spirit place on Earth the great responsibility, and he messed up, he's going to be either to go to another planet, less evolved than Earth. Believe it or not, there is planets less evolved than Earth. We shouldn't complain, right? Or this spirit is going to be reincarnate one of the regions of the planet, because we see many, many differences on planet Earth. Then if this spirit goes to a less evolved part of the world, he's going to feel it like he's living on another planet, right? So this will bring with them the knowledge they have acquired, and will have the mission of enabling these races to advance. So if they are not being punished, because they are so usually intelligent, they go to places and they can use this intelligence. They go to places less evolved than Earth, or another planet, or another place on Earth, and they're going to help that planet with their intelligence. But inside them, they're going to be missing, right? Earth. They will be replaced by more advanced spirits who will see it that justice, peace, and fraternity have more influence. So we are having already spirits, they are incarnate, and they are more fraternal. It's like they tend to be more influenced by fraternity and peace. We've seen this transformation in kids, right? Now, according to the spirits, the earth will not be transformed by a cataclysm that will suddenly wipe out the entire generation. That's not what's going to happen. We're going to, something's going to happen and take all these people moved from earth. No, or destroy earth. It's not going to happen. The current generation, it will disappear gradually, and the new one will follow it in the same way, without there having been any change in the natural order of things. Consequently, everything will proceed on the outside, but with this single difference, a crucial one. A portion of spirits, the spirits who used to incarnate on the earth, will no longer to do so. Instead of a backward spirit inclined toward evil and who would have incarnated in a child being born, there will be a more advanced spirit with a propensity for the good. Now, if you go to Matthew on chapter 24, verse 34, Jesus brought this teaching. Truly, I tell you, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things have happened. Thus, it does not much involve, we're not talking about new corporeal generation, but rather a new generation of spirits. That's what we're talking about. This is what Jesus, without doubt, meant when he said, verify, verify. I say unto you that this generation will not pass away until these events have been fulfilled, which is another translation of the same verse. Consequently, those who hope to see the transformation occur by the means of supernatural and extraordinary effects will be disappointed. That's not going to happen. Now, just so we can, we can place our minds someplace, right? Having this locate Earth. Let's locate Earth, right? We have different categories of inhabit worlds. We are not going over this today because this is it's like a whole class entirely. What we're going to tell, like briefly, is we have superior worlds, as we see in the slide. I will try to put my mouse over. I don't know if you'll be able. Yes, I think you will be able to see. We have superior worlds here, and you have like Earth planets, and we have inferior worlds. In superior worlds, is in more advanced worlds, life is all spiritual. Here on Earth, or other planets like Earth, is in intermediate worlds. There is a mixture of good and evil with the predominance of one or the other, according to the degree of advancement. So, from the teaching given by the spirits, one comes to understand that the various worlds are in conditions very different from one another. Allan Kardec. So, now that we located ourselves in this classification, we have to say that the present age is one in transition. We are going to a transition. So the members of both generations are mixed together. Standing at the midpoint, we are watching the departure of one and the arrival of the other, and each is already distinguishable by the characteristics there that are proper to it. So these two generations hold ideas and views that are complete opposites by the nature of their moral dispositions, but especially their intuitive and innate dispositions, the one that they brought as spirits. It is easy to tell each of the two each individual belongs. So you can tell if this spirit is a new generation or it's not. We can tell by looking at their purpose to do good, right? And you can see many people, they have a tendency only to do evil. If they continue on this path, they probably going to reincarnate in another region of the planet, having another opportunity to fix that, or they're going to be sent out of Earth to planets less evolved than Earth. Moral progress. Charged with founding the age of moral progress, the new generation is distinguishable by an overall precocious intelligence and reason combined with an innate sentiment of good spiritualist beliefs, and an unmistakable sign of a certain degree of previous advancement. That's the moral progress we see in this new generation. Consequently, it will not be composed exclusively of eminently high-ordered spirits. I'm not saying that high-ordered spirits are going to incarnate to compose this new generation. No. But of those who, having already progressed, are predisposed to assimilating progressive ideas, and they are capable of upholding the regenerative movements. So sometimes people, when people say, I have a daughter, and they say, oh, you did a great job. She's so like such a good human being. She cares for others and such as, and I say, hey, wait, I have only 50% of the credit. The rest is with her. Because you now you think you are a parent of a new generation of the spirit, because you see the moral advancement in your child, doesn't mean that you have to keep that child in the right path, because they are not high order spirits. They really have a progress and advancement in moral progress, but they need you as a parent to be guiding them, right? So there is no, we cannot just, oh, okay, higher spirits, I don't have to do anything. So let's talk about these less evolved spirits. So on the other hand, what distinguishes less evolved spirits is primarily their rebelliousness against God by refusing to acknowledge any power superior to human power. So anyone we can note doesn't believe in God or doesn't believe there's a higher power, their instinct, propensity for degrading passions and anti-fraternal sentiments of selfishness, pride, envy, jealousy. In other words, their attachment to everything material, sensuality, ambition, and greed. I think we can put ourselves in this classification, don't you think? Because one of these problems we certainly have, so we are still less evolved spirits, right? Now, we can work on these vices. We can work on our moral progress. So these are the vices of which earth must purge it by the banishment of those who refused to mend their ways. So we need to fix that now, not the next life, existence. Now, next reincarnation, I will take care of that. No, needs to be taken care now. Selfishness, pride, envy, jealousy. We need to take care of this now. For they are incompatible with the reign of fraternity, and moral individuals will always suffer a great deal in contact with them. Yes, we at a certain degree, we suffer when we encounter less evolved spirits, less evolved than us, spirits less evolved than us. We suffer in contact with them, right? So when the earth is freed from them, people will progress without obstacles. So those spirits that already make those moral advancements, and they are not be required to be in contact with these spirits anymore, because this can be an obstacle for their advancement. So when the earth is freed from them, people will progress without obstacle towards a better future that is reserved for them in this world as a reward for their efforts and perseverance while waiting a more complete purification to open the way for them to higher order worlds. And talk about perseverance, I'm going to have a lecture on Saturday about this very topic, very important topic. So it doesn't mean that all less evolved spirit will be banished from earth and take to less evolved, okay, let's take all those bad spirits and take off earth and take them to less evolved worlds. That's not how it happened. On the contrary, many will come back on earth because many, when they discarnate, they don't have the influence of the matter and the physical body. Most of them, they see things much differently than when they were alive. This is a good news, right? Most of them. That's what the Spirit says, right? And they were on earth doing bad things, driving force of circumstances, of examples they have. That's why it's very important we take care of our kids. If you see a tendency since early age, you need to fix and correct that. And if you need help, there's always some professional help you can have. But we need to fix that. So once they're removed from the influence, these less evolved spirits, once the influence that make them bad is removed, they see much, they become another spirits, so to speak. We have seen many examples of this, that is spirits saying to Kardec. They will be aided by benevolent spirits who take an interest in them, and who will hasten to enlighten and show them the erroneous path that they have followed. So these benevolent spirits will make their evolution faster because they're going to show them what is wrong. So also our prayers and exhortations, we ourselves can contribute to their improvement because there is a continuous unit between the dead and the living. Because earth is populated by incarnate and discarnate spirits. So if we see certain events, very bad events happening, guess what? If we pray, we will help those spirits. It's not easy, but we are also not evolved spirits. So we also have things to fix in ourselves. So when we see spirits that is less evolved than us, we can extend help by praying for them. The benevolent spirits also be working with them because we are all connected. So the way in which the transformation is occurring is quite simple, and as we have seen, is completely of a moral character, and in no way derogates from the laws of nature. Okay. My computer is acting up like that. Oh, okay, changed. Okay. New generation. Whether the spirits of the new generation are new, more evolved spirits, or whether they are old spirits who have evolved, the result is the same. It doesn't matter. What matters is when we get there. So for the moment they display better dispositions, there is always a renewal. Thus, incarnate spirits form two categories according to their natural dispositions. On one hand, they are the stragglers who leave, and the other, the progressive spirits who arrive. So we have the ones that are leaving Earth, and the other ones, they are arrived, the one that understood the moral consequences. So The state of customs in society, whether in a people or race or the entire world, will therefore be the result of which the two classes will be preponderant one. That's why we have to work for a better place to be, because that's going to be the transformation. Kardec brings us an example. I'm going to try to explain here. It's an ordinary comparison, just to better comprehend what happened in such circumstances. These, spirits that have disposition for good, and what happened to them. Okay. Imagine a regiment composed mostly of unruly and undisciplined men who are constantly causing disorder, and the severity of a penal law often has difficulty restraining it. So these men are the strongest because they are the most numerous. They support, encourage, and incite one another by example. The few good men in the middle of this have no influence. Their device is scorned, they are ridiculed, they are mistreated by the others, and suffer in their company. Now, guys, what I just described, is this not a picture of today's society? We have less evolved spirits in bigger quantity, and we have a very, very small, more evolved spirits. Try to tell them, hey, don't do that. This is not good for anybody. But it doesn't matter, right? Now, let's suppose, continue our example, let's suppose that the men of this regiment are taken one by one, 10 by 10, 100 by 100, and they are replaced at the same rate by an equal number of good soldiers. Even some who had been expelled, but who have truly mended their ways since then. After some time, what happened? The regiment will be the same one, but it will have been transformed, because good order will have followed disorder. This is how it will be with a regenerated humanity. I think it's a very, very good example. I hope you could follow it, because that's what is happening. So you see, the regiment didn't change. Earth will not change. They're not new spirits. They are spirits that they leave and then come back, and then the numbers become bigger. The more evolved the spirits and become bigger than less evolved spirits. That's how we're going to achieve that. Collective departure. So the great collective departures are not meant only to activate exits, but to transform the minds of the masses more rapidly by freeing it from evil influences and lend greater ascendancy to new ideas. Guys, what is happening today with COVID? We have collective departure. It's 1,000 people dying every day. So we have to see this as a transformation, not a destruction. Because in spite of their imperfections, are ripe for such a transformation that many depart in order to retemper themselves in a purer source. As long as they remain in the same environment and under the same influences, they would have persistence in their old ideas, their ways of looking at things. So these people, they are, let's see, departing They are coming back better. So until they return, they will find that things have changed and they will experience the influence of a new environment into which they have been born. Instead of opposing new ideas, they will support them. Of course, we're not talking about every single one of them, because each discarnate spirit, when disincarnate, when they died, they experience, each discarnate has an explanation for that death. So we're not talking about, we cannot generalize. Okay, regeneration of humankind. The regeneration of humankind, therefore, does not absolutely require spirits to be completely renewed. No. A modification in their moral outlook is sufficient. So they're not asking too much, right? This modification occurs in all those who are predisposed to it once they are removed from the pernicious influences of the world. When they are taking off the pernicious influences, they understand. Thus, those who come back to earth are not always other spirits, but frequently the same ones who now think and feel in a different way. Thanks God, right? Now, after all this meditation we have, will life on earth ever get better? It's definitely a yes, because spiritists bring a message of hope for the future. We are not alone in this planet. God didn't abandon us. To finish our evening today, our talk, I want you to read this. There are 2 slides, and I want to read, and it's so beautiful text from the Genesis book by Allan Kardec. It's look like a prayer itself. It's one of these widespread movements, the spirits going back and forth, that is occurring at present, and which will usher in the reorganization of humankind. The increases in the causes of destruction is a characteristic sign of the times, for they will hasten the emergence of new prototypes. They are the leaves that fall in autumn and which are followed by other leaves full of life, for humankind has its own seasons, just as individuals go through their various stages of life. The dead leaves of humankind fall striking by blasts and blows from the wind, only to be reborn more alive under the same breath of life, which is not extinguished, but purified. I'd like to thank you all today for being here and to listen these words. And I wish you that with all this talk we had today, you meditate about it. You meditate all these things bad and happen. That's the nature of our planet. It's like that because that's the moral advancement we are right now. But we can work individually and we can work as a collective group. And I'd like to thank you again for your patience, and I'll see you next time. So,